Good evening. Hello and welcome to another one of our wonderful book events. There's one a day for the last few days, actually, given it's Independent Bookshop week. So my name's Ben. I'm proud owner of our bookshop in Tring, and I've got two troublemakers here who have been causing trouble whilst we're and Lesley's only just arrived, actually, and because her sound wasn't working. So hello Katie, hello Lesley, how are you guys doing?
Really?
Very well, thank you.
Yes.
Fantastic. Now, I'm not normally this organised, and it's probably more reference to the fact that Lesley, you've got Annabelle as your PR, but she sent me a rather lovely bio for the pair of you. So I feel as though I should pay homage to the wonderful bios, and at least sound like I know what I'm doing here.
That sounds brilliant.
That sounds great, does it? So, Lesley, sit back and prepare yourself for probably a load of words you know about, frankly.
So probably wrote them.
You wrote them.
I don't know what you're going to read.
Let's see. Lesley Pearse is a global #1 bestseller with fans across the world and sales of over 10 million copies of her books to date. One of the nation's best loved storytellers. A Lesley Pearse book is sold every 4 minutes in the UK. Who does the stats on this? Lesley is master of the gripping storyline, always introducing her readers to characters that are impossible to forget. Although there is no set formula for Lesley Pearse novel, strong heroines and jeopardy are pervasive. Suspects, published today in hardback. Is it today?
Yes.
It is today.
Yeah, today.
Oh, sorry, I was thinking it was last week, but today is Lesley's 29th novel, and his gripping page turner full of suspense.
I didn't write that.
That's great. Sorry, I was there. What an honour. We're hosting the actual launch. I was thinking we were one of the launches. So, Katie, however, do I add the word however? No, I don't. Katie Fforde is also a best-selling author. Each of her books explores a different profession or background, and her research has helped her bring these to life. She's been a porter in an auction house. I'm going to have to bring you up on that. Tried her hand at pottery, refurnished furniture, delved behind the scenes of a dating website. I'm going to have to bring that up as well. And she's even been on a Ray Mears survival course. Going to have to bring that up too. She loves being a writer. To her, there isn't a more satisfying and pleasing thing to do. She particularly enjoys writing love stories. She believes falling in love is the best thing in the world. And I have to say, I've got to bring chocolate into this, surely, come on. She wants all the characters to experience it and her readers to share their stories. Her latest book, A Wedding in the Country, is out now in hardback. And she also wrote a quick read, Saving the Day, for this year's reading agency campaign. How do we get on there? That was good.
That was, thank you. Thank you for that.
So it's such a pleasure to have the pair of you here. Thank you so much for joining us. And let's have an hour of bonkers behaviour, shall we? So, Lesley, congratulations on the publishing of your new book.
Thank you very much. It's not been very exciting. I've just been doing radio today. No parties, no nothing. I've got a glass of something here.
That's nice.
I wish I could compete with you. I've got a bottle of water. So
yes, I've got water. But Lesley, I'm really enjoying it. I haven't finished it, but it's one of those when you put the light out eventually when you absolutely have to. And now I'm already thinking when I go to bed, I'll find out more, because it is really so gripping and unputdownable. So congratulations on yet another fantastic book.
Well, thank you. And you've done some wonderful ones. You're so cozy. Your books are lovely. Whenever I'm feeling poorly, I always pick up one of your books and get taken off to some nice place. Yeah. It's funny. Books are just the best thing, aren't they? They're like medicine, holidays, and everything. Family. The best things about family, not the bad things, all thrown into one.
Yes.
And a nice snuggly dog as well.
It's becoming apparent that these two know each other, dare I say it.
We do indeed.
Can we have a bit of backstory as to how you do know each other?
We are actually related. We're mother in paws. I have a dog that was from Katie's dog. Katie's dog was the mother's. So Stan is partially Katie's.
I had a litter of puppies, and it just so happened Lesley was coming for lunch, and she didn't actually carry it away at that moment.
No, but he crawled on my lap, didn't he? I sat on the
Yes.
floor and he made a beeline for me.
He claimed her.
Yeah, so that was it. Love at first sight.
Yes.
I wish that my love affairs were as good with dogs as they are, were as good with humans as they seem to be with dogs.
Well, so you
We
didn't
must
actually cover off how you met in the first place, or is this a
We
booking
must have
thing?
been doing an event together.
RNA or something, wasn't it?
RNA,
I think it was just at the Romantic Writers thing, wasn't it?
Was it, did we do an event? I think we must have done an event, because otherwise we would have, I mean, I remember meeting you across a big table at the, at an RNA do, but I didn't really talk to you because the table was too big. You know, you can't really talk across. And I was sitting next to Harry Evans. But I think later on we did an event, and anyway, we became partners in crime quite quickly.
Yes. And of course, I didn't used to live a million miles, and then we did that fashion show.
That's right. Lesley did a fashion show, and Lesley looked gorgeous and everything. She's so tall and elegant and slim, and I felt like her dumpy fat friend. But it was fun. We giggled and laughed so much.
When you say a fashion show, was this a catwalk and everything?
Yes.
Yes, with half-naked men.
Yes.
The buff waiters, wasn't it? But they did actually have shorts on, as I recall.
Yes, I think they weren't completely naked, but yes, it was for charity, obviously.
Yes,
we weren't just doing it to have fun, but it was brilliant fun, and going around choosing the clothes was fun in the shops.
Yes.
That was sort of more fun. Shopping together.
Yes,
that was the best fun, and we've done a few things, and it's always so great. And now we actually have the same publisher. Not because either of us have changed publisher, but our
they've all merged.
Got married, yes, and so we're all back in the same family again, which is lovely.
Fantastic. I was just about to say it only took 8 minutes, but naked men had already come into it. That must be a record.
Yes.
So I mean, the thing that's quite apparent, and this will be a sensible question, Lesley, is the fact that you have. I mean, you mentioned Romantic Novel Association. You're sort of morphing yourself into more of a crimey, thrillery.
Into darkness.
Morphing yourself into darkness. I mean, I applaud your initiatives. If you don't mind me saying that. But what is the reason for that?
Well, I was never a romantic writer, not like Katie is. I mean, they didn't know what to call me. So I got lumped in there, but I never really was. And, they didn't have an appropriate genre to call me. So, but I mean, for the last few books, yes, it has got darker, may get darker still. Seeing as I've spent the whole of lockdown watching things like Silent Witness, I'm now qualified to do an autopsy should you need one. But people have been saying to me, why have you changed? And I really don't know. I think it's, the lockdown may have had something to do with it, hours spent alone, because unlike Katie, who has a family who are, husband and that at home, I'm on my own and did actually spend weeks on my own without anybody at all. So that may have had something to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know really. But it's going to carry on because I can only think of grisly subjects now.
Well, you're doing it jolly darn well, so it's not going against you in any way. So, no. Crack on, being dark.
Well, the whole idea of this book is the nosy neighbour syndrome, where you're watching out the window of what people do. And I've always suspected that almost everybody that you see whose houses that you don't know, there's something going on in there.
Definitely.
That we just wish we knew what it was, So, I don't think they're all really totally boring, just sort of going to work, coming home, having their tea and going to bed. I'm sure there is more going on in every household in England.
Yes, you're
absolutely right. And I want
to
tap into it.
Well, I live in the murder capital of the West, I think, because we've had 2 brutal murders.
Have you?
Within yards of me. There were They were actually 20 years apart from each other, two of them. And, so it does happen, nice little bungalow. And you do wonder whether people are going to want to buy houses where someone's been savagely murdered.
Yeah.
I tell you.
They haven't, it hasn't bothered them. And you always think, well, we won't mention it. But of course they do find out.
Yeah, well, I know somebody who bought a house in Bristol where there had been a terrible murder. And he went to look at the house. He actually knew already, and there was a rug on the floor, and he pulled it back, and there was still the big blood stain on the floor.
Yes.
And he still bought it because it was a bargain and it was cheap. And I've never checked up on him to find out if there was any, spirits or anything came out or any repercussions from it, because you'd half expect there to be something nasty, wouldn't you?
Well, I think because when something so violent has happened in a space, it sort of must affect the air around it, I would have thought.
I would have thought so. I wouldn't want to buy a house where something like that had happened.
No.
Well, I think the place not to live, somewhere like Midsummer, you don't want to live in Midsummer.
Oh yeah,
murders
Certainly
all the
not
time.
there.
And the other one, as idyllic as it looks, Samarie, where the Death in Paradise is based. That's honestly, it's carnage.
It can't do much for their tourist industry, can it?
no. Well, the Midsummer thing,
murdered.
They must have had as many deaths in Midsummer as there are people living there. I'm surprised there's anyone left.
They're shipping them in droves. It's like World War Lancaster bombers or something, or Lancaster pilots.
That's another thing about liking to look at people. The houses in Midsummer Murders are so lovely. I always sort of think, give me a bit more of a space so I can look at that house that you're in, these sweet little cottages and everything.
No, you need to be on Rightmove. That's what there are people who refer to it as, is it house porn or something, or
property porn. Property porn. I spend a lot of time on property porn.
Have you looked up my house? Because my house is up for sale.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, so you can look that up. Yeah.
Oh, wait, you'll have to give me more details. So
I'm only moving 6 doors down.
Oh, right. Oh,
perhaps we could do a little tour. Maybe there's someone watching who's hunting.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a wacky house, as you would expect. Yes, but so far we're just waiting now for offers to come in.
Let's ask some sensible literary questions.
Writer questions.
Yeah, no, audience, obviously, this event's, well, for you, frankly. So if you want to put in any questions, use the Q&A function, and I'll pick up. Even if you want to just say hello, frankly, use either the Q&A or the chat function. How have you found lockdown in terms of the creative output, in terms of writing? Have you found it's basically been just too difficult, or have you found it very, very therapeutic and very easy to sort of create the written word? Katie?
I actually loved the first lockdown because we had that lovely weather. Apart from the existential angst that we were all going to die, I got loads done, and I've actually had a little change of direction in that I've gone back to the 60s. So for the first time, I'm writing something which is considered historical, which, considering I lived through it, it's a bit awful to think your own lifetime is now history.
What's the topic? What's the topic in the 60s?
Well, it's just girls growing up. It's based around the cookery school I went to. I actually went to it in the 70s, but I thought the 60s sounded sexier, so I went for the 60s.
You could wear a shorter skirt too.
Well, exactly, wear a shorter skirt. So it's got a lot of my life, my teenage life, my teenage life in that book. And there's 3 in a series. So that's different for me. I've never done that before. But then the second lockdown with the second book in the series, I thought, oh good, we're having another lockdown, no one will interfere with me, I won't have to get dressed, I'll just put a caftan on over my nightie, that'll be brilliant. But the writing, it didn't sort of pour out of me in the same way that it did for the first book, which is a shame. But there you go, can't have everything. But it was all right. But and now going out and about again, that seems a bit weird.
Yes, no, obviously we're living that in running a bookshop and seeing people's behaviours, putting on. We've now done 2 actual physical events now. So we've actually had authors come to us and do. So we did a book launch for Stacey Hall's in a bigger room, and we did a virtual feed of that. And then on Monday we had Con Iggulden do something actually in the bookshop.
Oh, right.
So I mean, it's a very small bookshop, so we managed to limit it to, I think there were 8 people in the shop. And that was weird. That was, it was peculiar. I have to commend those people who came, because they are the trendsetters, the sort of leaders, as it were. I understand people's reticence, and as a festival organizer, I'm obviously thinking about that as I'm booking an autumn festival, wondering whether people will be willing to come out. That's the challenge. But Lesley, how has your creative output been for the?
Well, like Katie, I thought it was going to be brilliant in the beginning, but because I'm moving, I had a big garden to do, and while the demolition work's been going on with the apartment I'm going to move in, I've been doing the garden. But no, I found it really, really hard to write, and I've been watching absolute rubbish on the television, endlessly, reading a lot, and missing being out. I like getting dressed up and going off somewhere, and you couldn't do that, so that was boring. And I saw these clothes that were now obsolete, and shoes and stuff, which I'm fed up with it. I'm dying to go back and see real people in real situations again. I went out to dinner last night with my agent, and that was lovely, because it was quite buzzy in the restaurant, and there was a few people in there I knew, and people saying hello and that. And that I feel quite normal today, as opposed to a week ago when I was feeling like I was stuck in some sort of prison. Yeah, and it is. I've got to write now, because I've got to get this book done. And I've only done about 5 chapters of a new one, and I'm struggling with it. But we had a Zoom thing with my editors last night, and usually when I speak to them, when my editor says to me, "We need 1 book a year, Lesley," and she says that in a very serious voice, and I realise that this is a rap over the knuckles. If I don't produce it, she'll get cross. So I probably will get stuck into it now.
Good.
I do remember once you saying you were planning a book, and you said, well, there's the beginning, and then there'll be words. I don't know what words. There'll be words to fill the book up eventually. That's what it is. It's
words, lots of words, and a cover.
Words.
I think I stole that from French and Saunders, actually.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I'm sure I did. There was a sketch where they went to a publisher's office and say, "We're writing a book, and there'll be lots of words and a very nice cover," and and they didn't say what was the subject was or anything. It was hilarious. Probably one of those writers' jokes, an in-joke,
Yes.
But Christine has dropped a question. Christine Downs has dropped a question in. Her question is, do you find time to read? And if so, who are your favourite authors? I'd like to extend that question to thinking about lockdown. Have you read more? And who have you had? I mean, obviously, there's been a lot more reading going on. I've experienced that as a bookseller, because business has been fairly brisk in those terms. But so, what do you read, Katie? What's your favourite stuff?
Well, I usually read the books that are sent to me, to quote. And I mean, I love my friends' books, obviously. And Lesley's is a bit of a cheating book, because I didn't need to quote for that. But when they asked me if I could come here, and I was thinking I couldn't for various reasons, I said, "But can you still send me the book?" Which they kindly did. And I'm very much enjoying that. I enjoy all sorts of things. But during lockdown, because it was also difficult, we didn't know when lockdown started whether book sales would, survive. So I tried to read more, to quote for, to sort of help people along the way. But in fact, yes, I mean, it's strange. Sales did go up in lockdown because people were reading. And I just hope people still, keep the habit. If they've got into the habit of reading, I hope they keep it up. But yes, no, I do like all sorts of things. And I've really never think of the book I'm reading, which is Lesley's, which I am really enjoying. But I have read.
Good choice.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And quite often when you see the parcels arriving through the door, your heart sinks a bit. But when I knew it was Leslie's, my heart didn't sink. It lifted.
That's good.
I mean, you do get some lovely books sent to you, you know, that you really enjoy, and it's lovely to be able to, you know, back them. But you never quite know. You know, it's a little bit of a,
No.
oh, am I going to like this? Oh, it might not.
Yeah. It's difficult when it's a debut writer, isn't it? Because you know that whatever they want you to say, you know, that book's going to stand on that. And I've always felt that my name on the cover of a book and the thing is like the kiss of death, because I can remember once seeing 3 books in Waterstones with a thing from me on the front, and all of them did nothing. And I used to say to writers, please don't ask me to write a quote because it's the kiss of death. But that seems to have gone now. And I've had some fabulous books sent to me this year. I can't actually think of any. Oh, the couple at number 9 was one that I really enjoyed. Claire, somebody. Yeah.
You're entirely allowed to get up.
Claire Douglas.
Oh, right.
That was good. But the book that stands out for me, the 2 books that stand out for me through the whole of lockdown was The Beekeeper of Aleppo and what was the other one? The Crawdads, Where the Crawdads Sing. I absolutely love both those books.
Well,
and Shuggie Bain, I love that as well. I haven't actually finished that, and I'm just picking that up every now and again, you know, and reading a bit more and sniggering at it. It's good.
I love the fact that you mentioned The Beekeeper of Aleppo, because we're hosting the launch of Christy Lefteri's next book, which is Songbirds.
Really?
Which is in 2 weeks' time, I think.
Well, you have to tell me so I can watch. Is it going to be on here?
It'll be a virtual event. Yeah, no,
I absolutely love that book.
We offered to do it as a physical event, but Christy is insistent on having a second jab. So, which is fine. You know, virtual. We're in a world where virtual works as well, and it will continue to work.
Yeah. Well, I actually listened to that one on Audible, and you had that Art Malik reading it, whose voice is like liquid velvet. You could listen. He could be reading the Lord's Prayer to you, and you'd be crying.
I don't want to encourage Audible, frankly, as a bookseller.
No, but it's great for sunbathing. Great for sunbathing is Audible, you know, because you don't have to hold a book.
Yeah, but so are books. Books are great for sunbathing.
Yeah, but you've got to hold them, you know, and also dog walking. It's quite good for. But I do like books. I like the smell of them, the feel of them, the whole thing. So
more of this, please. More of this. Yeah, much better.
Yeah. And the excitement of going into a bookshop and what am I going to find in there is wonderful. I went to get Shuggie Bain from a shop in Torquay right in the heart of lockdown. It was a horrible day. It was tipping down with rain. I had to wait outside, knock on the door. And I'd rang them before and we'd done the credit card thing over the phone. And then he came to the door and it was like you were buying drugs or something, you know, handed this parcel in a bag. And I got back to the car park, a multi-story car park, and there was absolutely nobody in there but me. And I actually opened the book and started reading it in there. And I thought, you're never going to have this opportunity again, have a whole car park with about 12 floors to yourself and a book.
Lesley, I love the fact that you're talking to the screen. It's brilliant because what we see is your hair on the whole, which is that's better.
Oh, really? What am I doing wrong?
No, you're fine. Don't worry. That's much better.
That's lovely.
Just keep the impassioned chatting you're doing. It's gorgeous.
But
well, maybe I can put my chair down a bit.
No, you probably need to be higher.
Exactly.
Oh no, maybe you want your computer higher. But when you're nervous being in a multi-story car park on your own, because whenever you see one on television, you know something bad is going to happen to that person.
It did cross my mind when I was walking around in there that, in fact, I said to a woman, it's a bit scary, isn't it? And she looked at me sideways as much to say, should I be scared of you?
Yes. This woman is speaking to me. Oh my goodness, another human being acknowledging.
Yeah, she hasn't got a mask on because she's outside. Yeah. No, and actually the whole thing about wearing masks is a bit scary, isn't it? I hate the black ones.
Yes,
You know,
I
when
agree.
someone's coming towards you with a black mask on, you can't see anything of their face. I find that quite intimidating.
Yes, no, I agree. Although we were on a train coming back from Edinburgh, long story, I mean, long journey, and not because it was in Edinburgh. And there was a moment, I mean, it was actually a gay couple, but this man was obviously smiling, and he obviously wanted, you know, when you're communicating and because most of your face is missing, it's harder to communicate. And I thought, oh, there's a short story there. You know, you meet somebody when they're wearing a mask, but you don't really know what they look like.
No,
So
I actually thought it would be good to have little paddles that we've got. I am smiling, you know, so you could hold it up at the cash point, you know, at the supermarket, you know, and that sort of thing. And some people's eyes show that they're smiling, don't
yes.
they? I'm looking at you, and yes, you do, Katie. You look as if you're smiling. But certainly when people have got those big black ones, there's no expression at all.
No, and it
does remind you just how important facial expressions are, you know, in the whole community. I long for a day where masks are no longer needed, because I miss those times.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
You're hiding behind a bit of a mask with your big beard.
Well, yeah, fair enough. That's a very good, well done, you. a good riposte. That is fair enough. So, right, I think I might bring up one or two of the things. Katie, you've worked as a porter in an auction house. Tell me, you must have a few stories from, and what was the other one that was? Oh yeah, delved behind the scenes of a dating website. What's involved in that?
Well, that was fun because it was the one that Sarah Beanie did, mysinglefriend.com, and they were based in Stroud, where I lived, and they were renting my daughter's flat. So I had a sort of intro, and they said, "Oh yes," and they showed me it, and they showed me how to get in to people's profiles and things. And honestly, what I really came out with is how much better my husband could have done if he'd only gone online dating, because there were women who liked sailing and hadn't let themselves go or got fat or anything. And I thought, I came home and said, darling, you should see what's out there. These gorgeous women, you clean up. But he wasn't very interested. But it was interesting. And actually there was a lovely boy who'd been at school with my daughter, who was the dating expert, and people who weren't getting responses, he would give them advice how to sort of present themselves and everything. But the auction house was fun because they made me, I thought I was just going to be researching for my book, but they made me be a porter. And one of the things I had to hold on stage was a sheep's head that had curly horns, and it was in a box, and I thought, and I had to tip it forward so people could see what it was. And I thought, oh my goodness, supposing it falls out and bounces down across the stage into the audience. And then I thought, I discovered that the person who'd bought it was a proper porter who wore a brown coat, and he was going to make shepherd's crooks with it and use the curly horns. And I thought, well, what do you do with the rest of it? Do you put it in the recycling? Do you bury it? General rubbish? I mean, what do you do with a sheep's head?
I would have loved that sheep's head on my wall.
Oh yes, it could have looked quite good. It was obviously a sow sheep or whatever that have 4 horns. I can't remember quite which ones they are, but that was fun. I mean, it was all fun. I love those jobs. I think being a hospital, not a hospital porter, an auction house porter was the best job I really wanted. And then I realised how much they didn't earn, and I thought, maybe I'll stick with my job that I've got. Maybe I do slightly better out of that. But it was brilliant fun. I did picture restoration as well, which I also loved. And the Ray Mears thing was very good.
Yes.
Fun. Very good fun. Partly because there was about sort of 20 of us on the course and 3 women. And all the rest were men in combat gear. And it was a bit scary to start with. But in the end, we were walking through a forest, and the man in front of me stopped and said, I think a wild garlic flower stuck into a canopy could be really lovely. And I thought, we've gone a bit far from foraging here. We're designing canopies. But it was super fun. It was super fun. And everyone was very nice to me and didn't make me do anything I didn't want to do. Fortunately, their mothers-in-law had all read my books, so they knew who I was, because otherwise it would have been really embarrassing. Otherwise, why is this woman here, you know?
Yeah.
And I got lost the first night. I went for a pee because we 3 women were allowed to. Everyone else had to go to the Trings, which were miles away, and I couldn't find my tent. And I was looking at all these tents, and all these men were in them, farting and snoring and making noise. And I had to ask for help. But fortunately, I did get back to my tent. I'm not really allowed out on my own very much.
Sounds wonderful.
I'm not really safe.
Did you have to do abseiling or anything scary?
No, not on that course, but I did once for charity abseil down our church tower, which was absolutely terrifying.
Oh God.
It was really terrifying, but I did get £1,000, so it sort of seemed worth it.
Oh, that's above and beyond for me. I couldn't do that.
Well, and no, everyone was very cross with me for doing it, but the person who asked me said, basically, Katie, it's not really interesting seeing fit young men abseiling down a church. I said, you mean fat older ladies are more fun? He said, yeah, it just sort of better put this. That's a bunch, Jonathan. But I went for it. And, you know, we did our best. It was quite.
I think that was incredibly brave, Katie. I'm most impressed. I can't even walk up a few steps without a handrail. And the house I'm doing up, the handrails have been taken off the steps. And one of the guys that's working there has to come out and take my hand and lead me up like I'm the queen or something, you know, up the house. And it is quite funny. I say hand now, you know, royal command, hand.
Well, I can't. And actually, later on, my daughter took tea up to the people who were helping us at the top. And she said, thank God, Mum doesn't have to come down those steps because I can go up. But I found it really difficult coming down because
that's what I find, the coming down.
The steps all merged together. And she said, well, at least Mum doesn't have to walk down these. I just had to go down the building. And
getting old's no fun, is it?
It's no fun. Although, I don't know. I think while you can laugh, it's all right.
And while you're writing, you can be anybody, you know? Exactly. You can sort of live that other life vicariously through some fictitious character. Yeah.
Yes, you can run up and down stairs and not even
Yeah. What happened to your thing on your profile? Was it the tango you were doing?
Oh, flamenco. Yes,
flamenco,
I actually stopped doing that because I couldn't balance on the ball of my left foot and do a lot of things with my right foot. But I did love it. I wished I'd started doing it earlier. It was wonderful.
Oh, great.
Good. So, what is your where do you get your inspiration for your writing? I mean, I know you decided to do a Ramir's course and work at an art gallery, but Lesley, where do you get your inspiration from in terms of?
I have no idea. It just sort of comes. Things crop up. You might a couple of lines in a newspaper, a television program or something, and I just suddenly have this idea, and then it grows as I'm writing. It's once I've got the characters kind of almost tell me what they want to do, which sounds bizarre, but you know.
Do you ever find yourself doing the level of research, as in actually go and do the jobs in the way Katie does?
No, in the past with my historical books, I've done a tremendous amount of traveling. I've been to the Crimea, to Alaska, drove all the way across America, I've been to Australia and all that kind of thing. And I'm getting a bit too old for that now. I haven't got the strength to do that sort of thing now. And that's another reason I think I've kind of morphed into the dark side with books that I can do the research from reading and that sort of thing. My favorite thing of research is actually in books. I don't trust the internet. I don't think it's always that accurate. So museums and books are my sort of thing. But I'm getting lazy now. You know, I want to make life a bit easier for myself, not traipsing to places like when I went to the gold rush in Alaska, and I went halfway up the steps, the golden steps that the guys went. Of course, they did it in the middle of winter when it was ice. But you know, I can remember thinking then, as I came down, they used to slide on shovels in the snow. And thinking, no, I'm too old for this now. I've got to find something else to write about. But historical things always call to me because it's fascinating.
You mentioned Crimea. Did you grow fond of that sort of environment? Because it's obviously heavy in the news at the moment with.
Yeah, well, when I went to the Crimea, it was where the first time they were letting tourists in actually there. And I went with a party of people where there was sort of to go and see gardens and stuff. And then finally we got to go to a battle scene. And there was a Russian woman telling us and she was talking absolute rubbish. She said, "Oh, this is Florence Nightingale's hospital." And I put my hand up. I said, "Excuse me, Florence Nightingale never went to the Crimea. She came in a boat, but she was sick and she went back to Scutari." And it went on like the one who's telling the story about what happened. And up until then, I think everybody thought I was a complete airhead who'd laid on the sunbed in Yorta, not moving a muscle and reading books and things, and showing absolutely no interest in seeing these quite inferior gardens they had there. But actually, I like war. My father was in the Royal Marines, and I think there's sometimes something in our heads where we're hardwired to this particular thing. And with me, it's war. I kind of have a natural understanding of what went on. I don't know why, apart from that's the only thing I can think of is the background, you know.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. Last night's interview I did with John Nichol revolved around the first Gulf War. He was captured. He was one of the prisoners of war.
Oh yeah.
That was paraded on the TV, and I'm not sure whether I should mention this, but he references in the book the way prisoners of war are treated by the Iraqis, and there's a reputation from Saddam Hussein's kind of henchmen that they were particularly evil, and they had a reputation for doing a rather a lot of damage to men's private parts, which was a terrible thing. And so I asked him the question. I said, "So are you fully equipped in the undercarriage area these days?" Which isn't a question you can ask Jeffrey Archer or.
No.
I mean, it seemed like the obvious thing, and he's a Geordie lad who he took it the right way, and it was very funny at the time. But it's the idea of being a prisoner of war and going through that sort of level of treatment, extraordinary.
Well, just the treatment that the average British soldier had back in those days. I mean, they went off to war. If their wives happened to come from the place where they left, like if they left from Southampton and their wife came from Southampton, she could get assistance. But if she didn't, and she came from Glasgow, for instance, she had to take her children to get up to Glasgow to get any financial help. And of course, the soldiers' money didn't come through as it should have done. I mean, I was angry when I was finding out all this stuff. And of course, Florence Nightingale did an awful lot to help the British soldiers. So the scenarios they've got now where they have fairly decent housing and they have all that sort of help and counselling, none of that existed. And there's a story about how they each had a chunk of meat and they used to have to tie a coloured string around it and then put it in this big vat. And when it was boiled for several hours, nothing with it, no nice spices or anything. They could have done with Katie there, adding a few nice things to make a nice stock. And then they pulled it out. And of course, it was 90% gristle, absolutely vile. Now, imagine, getting men to fight for our country and you're treating them like that. Absolutely appalling.
This whole subject came up because it is covered off in John's book. Actually, it's called Tornado, and it was as a result of this war the War Widows Association was formed, and because I think there were about 7 pilots who died, all Tornado pilots who were killed, and the widows were then told quite promptly, right, you don't get any of the money. Even when they've been captured, missing in action, you don't get any money. The money will be taken into an admin pot, and you've got to go and claim some money when you need it. It was just
terrible.
Honestly, it was.
And to be chucked out of their housing sometimes.
As a result of the War Widows Association, you get to stay in the house for 2 years, and as a matter of course. And so there's a whole heap of initiatives and things that came out of it that are all positive. it formed, you know, a very interesting part of his book, which I was very blessed to have read. There's some nice questions coming in, so I must
Yeah, move on.
Margaret Baxter, good friend of ours in the shop. Hello, Lesley and Katie. What inspired you both to become writers? So, Katie, what were you doing prior to writing?
I was being a housewife, and I had my two little boys, and I later had a girl, and I had a lovely Irish Wolfhound dog, and I had two lovely cats, and a lovely husband, and a lovely house. And I thought, there's something missing from my life. What is it? And it was only when I started writing that suddenly all the cogs fell into place. And I thought, this is what I need. I need an imaginary life as part of my life, or that my life was completely fine and absolutely perfect, nothing wrong with it. But there was this big missing bit. And once I started writing, I thought, yes, this is it. And I'd wanted to start writing when I used to be addicted to Mills and Boon novels, when I was quite lonely, when my husband was away at sea, and I had two little boys and they didn't sleep. Well, they probably did sleep, but they did it in shifts. So I never could sleep because there was always one of them awake. And so I was tired, sleep deprived, and Mills and Boon novels got me through. And I was on one a day, and I had a little stash. And I think that means I was an addict, because if the stash went down, I felt very anxious, which I think, again, defines addiction. And then I did think, once I stopped being quite so tired, I would love to do this for somebody else. I'd love to give them this bit of escape from their world, even if their world's not horrible. My world wasn't horrible. It was a bit lonely, but it was fine. But I just loved having somewhere else to go while breastfeeding a baby sitting on the sofa, which is not something, you know, I couldn't have gone anywhere in real life. But these books helped me escape. And I did think I would love to do that. And then once I started doing it, I thought, yes, this is what I need to be doing. It took me a long time to be published, though. Lesley was, I think, first one, wasn't it? Straight out.
No, I was 7 years in that gestation period. 7 years from writing it to the first one to when it got published. No, wasn't quick.
What formed your decision to start writing? What were you doing before then?
I had a whole series of jobs. I had a shop, actually, selling all kinds of mad animal things in Bristol. And I hadn't been there very long, where I'd started writing short, jokey things to the local paper. And people always used to ask me to write letters for them, difficult letters, because I was supposed to be really good at it. And I was always good at storytelling at school. I used to entertain people. So just one day I started writing. I'd read a book one night while I was breastfeeding one of my children, and the next thing I knew, the sun had come up and I hadn't been aware. It was the Thornbirds, by the way, the book. And as I walked down the stairs, I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to write a book like that makes people sit in one place and they don't even notice how much time's gone. Another book that affected me like that was Sebastian Faulks's Birdsong. I sat on a hard dining room chair and I must have been there for 5 hours and didn't even move while I was reading that. And there's something magical about that, and I wanted to tap into that magic. So I started writing, and once I started writing, it was a kind of escape from my business, which wasn't doing terribly well. Eventually I went bust. And where other people go and play tennis or something to relieve the tension, I was writing. So that's really how it started, for no particular reason other than the fact that I loved stories, you know.
Right, nice. Beverly has sent a message. Beverly, lovely to see you both, Lesley and Katie. Always enjoy your column in Woman and Home, Katie. Plus reading your books, both of you. Just wondering if you are planning to do any more in the Belle series, Lesley.
I think I've gone as far with Belle as I can. For a start, Etienne, her father, her husband, is at the last book, The Promise, was 60 plus, and I felt he had his last fight in that book. And I felt, you know, let's leave him as a gorgeous role model of how men should be, tough and strong, but also kind of sexy and gentle and that sort of thing as well. So I don't think I can do any more in there. I found it very hard when I wrote Belle. The reason there were 2 books on there was because I loved her so much I didn't want to let her go. But once I'd got on to her daughter, I did feel that, well, we've come to the end of the lollipop now, and I'll move on to something else. But I would quite like to do another Belle type book. The one I'm working on now, though I said I was going dark, is about a mother and daughter. So there's going to be a lot of sort of historical type stuff in that. So you may find you get your fix from Belle on this new book when I get it finished, if I ever get it finished.
So that's what you're working on right now, is that?
Yeah. Mm.
And Katie, what have you been working on over the last few?
Well, I've just written the second in my series of 3. I was told it wasn't a trilogy because there wasn't a narrative arc. And actually, I'm one of those writers, if you say the words narrative arc, I get a cold sweat because I've no idea what anyone is talking about.
I wouldn't know either.
And I just sort of thinking, oh God, I'm obviously not a writer. Anyway, there are 3 books in the series because my first book was about 3 girls and they each have their individual stories. So I've just written about Alexandra, and I'm about to start, when I've edited Alexandra, I'll start Meg, who is the last girl in, and that'll be that little, then I'll probably come back to contemporary fiction. But for a while I thought, oh, I've got fed up with contemporary fiction. I just want to, be in the 60s. But actually I had another idea for a book, Few, because I thought, when you have that moment, you think, oh, I'm never going to have another idea. And then you do have one. And you think, oh, that's all right. I can go on doing this.
Yeah.
It's a great relief.
Well, I liked my book that came out last year, Liar, was set in Shepherd's Bush in 1970, which was where I was when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter, who's 50 now. And I actually set it in the street where I lived and everything. And that was a joy to write because I remembered, there's something about when you have your first child, you remember everything about that, the area, what people were like, what they were wearing and everything as it goes down, and what you were listening to and what was on with the pictures and the whole caboodle. But I love writing things set in the 60s, but of course that's how I started out. My early books were all sort of that period. And the thing that daunts me now about writing in the present day is all the technology stuff we've got with phones and DNA and all that business. If you don't know what you're writing about, you're not a real forensic scientist or anything. Yes. You can so easily be tripped up with this stuff. When you read about P.D. James and people like that, these people have had a career in all that kind of stuff, haven't they? But not me. I've had a career doing nothing.
I have to say, Lesley has been a bunny girl, and there aren't many people who can say that. And she has got very long legs. She's very tall and slim and elegant. And you can tell she was a bunny girl because she's got the shape.
So Lesley, talk me through being a bunny girl.
It was actually
I can't believe I've asked that question.
No, it was really actually quite a boring job because I went for an audition with a girlfriend who wanted to work there more than life itself, and they picked me and not her, which she's still friends with me, but I think it was always a bit rankled a bit, But what they were looking for in those days was kind of well-bred girls who spoke properly and who had all the right, and actually most of the girls didn't have big boobs. They used to shove the top of their costume, stick rolled up socks in their costume. I didn't need to do that. Mine was real. But actually waiting on people for 6 or 7 hours at a time wearing 4-inch stilettos is not a picnic. And we weren't allowed to fraternize with the visitors, the guests. And before I went there, there'd been the Omar Sharifs, the Peter O'Tooles, all that kind of thing had gone to the Bunny Club, but they'd all gone and they were replaced by northern businessmen that were down in London on a jolly, who were pretty horrible, really. So it wasn't the dream job. But as a result of that, I went on to other work in promotions, which I did get really good jobs because people thought, well, I must be a bit special if I did that. So from that point of view, it was worth doing. The costume was fun, though. I doubt if I could ever get into it again, should I have one about my person.
I'm struck for what to add to that. Sorry. Fortunately, Beverly's put in a comment. Oh, thank you. Yes, he was always rather delicious. This is in reference to her previous question. Love the history in your books. So that's very exciting. Thank you. Do you really love doing the research for the history elements of your books?
Yes, very much so. I can read history books all day, never get fed up with them. And, you know, every time I found out a new fact of history, that takes me off, because it's about people, isn't it? History, you know, how people lived. I'm reading a book at the moment called Cunning Women, which was set in the Pendle Witches trial.
Oh, wow.
Around that period. It's not actually about any of the Pendle Witches, but these women are living. It's the first debut novel that I picked up somewhere. A wonderful cover it's got. But they're outcasts in the village, but people go there when it's dark to get medicine from them and that kind of thing. And I just love that. I love the thought of these outcast sort of people who see things, or people think they do, and think they're witches. And I suppose they're not witches at all. They're just not marching to the same drumbeat as everybody else. You know?
I love a bit of magic, just a little bit of something a bit, you know, otherworldly. I always think that's fascinating. But what I think is so good about historical fiction is that history books, I mean, I'm really interested in history if someone is telling me about it, but I don't read history books. But what I love is for someone to set a novel in a historical period that I know I can trust. Because a history book will tell you what happened, but a novelist will tell you what it was like. And
exactly.
it's what it's like that I always want to know. And that's what Lesley and others will do for me, in a way a history book won't.
I've always thought that there's an opportunity for a novelist now to write history books for children that are about characters who lived in a particular period, like the Great Fire of London or the Plague or whatever, and take it further than that, because we had a book like that when I was about 7 or 8. The teacher used to read to us, and I can remember her reading to us about Bring Out the Dead and all this and the Plague, and I was absolutely enthralled. And a friend of mine who helped me a lot with the Crimean thing, who is an expert on the Crimean War, he was a history teacher. And I keep saying to him, you're the person to do this, you could do it. And his wife has got a degree in English as well, and they could do it together. Write a really good story that kids of, you know, 10 or 12 would absolutely love as a story, but they're actually learning something valuable about the King and Queens of England and everything. I mean, there's so many good stories there, if you delve in far enough. Yeah.
And people on quizzes, even very intelligent people, have so little knowledge of history, like who came first, Elizabeth I or Queen Victoria. And I just think, just a basic.
That's just thick, isn't it?
Well, is it they just haven't learned it? I don't know. No. But it makes me worry about my grandchildren. I'm always sending them educational presents.
Are you?
Yes, I'm always looking online for ways that you can. I think, well, maybe no one else will teach them. Maybe I have to teach them.
I know when my daughter was doing Macbeth for O levels, the youngest one, and I'd never done Macbeth at school, so I didn't really. No, it wasn't Macbeth. No, it was. I can't remember what it was, which one it was, but anyway, whatever the story was, I hadn't read it. So we were out for a walk, and I said, "Well, tell me the story." And she said, "Well, this is Rodrigo, and he's a bit of a git." That was the end of her description. I said, "That hardly tells me what the story." Othello. It was Othello.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and I said, "Well, we need a bit more than that, Joe. You know, if you're going to write an essay on this, you know, Rodrigo was a bit of a git." But I think that's quite common with a lot of children, because they haven't actually grasped. And in Shakespeare as well, I mean, the things I did, we actually went to the Old Vic and we saw it on the stage.
Yeah.
Twelfth Night, for instance, we acted at school, and I actually took part in it. So the story is cemented in your head and what the story is about. But I think for a lot of children, they don't ever get that, you know.
One of the best initiatives we've done over lockdown is we've been doing these author visits, virtual author visits into school.
Oh, wow.
And the beauty of that is an author can visit a multitude of schools in one go. And so we've been very fortunate to have some incredible authors, but probably this week was the pinnacle, really. Michael Morpurgo.
Oh, what a wonderful chap he is.
Oh,
I
wow.
love his books.
And he did an event on I think it was Tuesday morning, and it was watched by 30 or 40 schools, 3,000 or 4,000 children watching it. And we even got some funding from the council to put free books into schools as well. But the way there was no bad question from me, frankly, or the children, and he answered them. And the most heart-rending question was from one child saying, "Why are your stories so sad?" And I sort of put that to him. And he answered it so eloquently, so beautifully. He said, it's a reflection of life. Life is sad. There are sad things happening. There are also lots of lovely things as well. And
well, I read Warhorse coming home on the train from London. I bought it for my grandson, and I was sitting there sobbing on the train. God knows what people thought of me. And then I became addicted. I kept buying Brandon more and more and more of these books, and I would read them all before I gave them to him. There was one about a greyhound that gets rehomed, and all of them made me cry, but they were wonderful, and they were so easy to get into. If I'd had those books when I was a child, I would have absolutely adored them.
Well, the reason I raised it was because the feedback I've had since the event is from parents and teachers all saying, the children, I've never seen the children like this. One mother came into the shop yesterday and said, our child came home from school on Tuesday afternoon, and he was just talking incessantly about Michael and his reading and his books, and normally you don't get a word out of him, and so suddenly a light was switched on, and honestly, you cannot buy that kind of reaction.
No. But he's always done things for children, hasn't he? He and his wife.
He runs a farm.
They've got that Blue Peter type village, haven't they, in North Devon? I did a radio program with his daughter, who is the daughter of the guy that started Penguin Books once, and I found out an awful lot about them. And so really, I applaud him, what he has actually done for our kids in this country. I think he ought to be knighted personally, because he's a quiet, unassuming man, but he is doing a really good job.
Absolutely.
And that's actually one of the joys of Zoom, is that he never could have done 30 schools.
No.
And so just one, and he could probably put more energy into that, because he wouldn't have had to travel and, go through all that process, which, when you're getting on a bit, this does take your energy.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it does.
And so that's a joyous thing.
We haven't got long left, so I'm going to give a sensible question, which is coming from Margaret. Both prolific writers, do you remember what all your books are about? That's the first question. Do you have a favourite book that you have written? So, Katie, first you.
Oh.
Firstly, do you remember what all your books are about?
I do mostly, yes. I mean, to be honest, sometimes when I can't get to sleep, I try to remember all the titles. And I'm always short. I know roughly how many books I've written. I'm always a bit vague, because I've done 2 anthologies, and do I count those? But I can never remember them all. But I do remember them when I look at them. I think, oh yes, that was about this, that and the other. I did very much like writing A Wedding in the Country, because I sort of went into a slightly different zone when I wrote it. So it was a great escape from the world. And I did really love doing that. But then the next book comes along, and then you like that as well. I mean, you sort of fall in love with it. It's funny, it's when your children have left school and left home, you're completely obsessed with them, and then they move on and you've got other children and you're obsessed with them. It's a funny old thing. So I do quite often look at a book and I think, oh yeah, no, I really loved that book. Oh no, I really like that book. And then, but I've forgotten, and I've moved on, and I've fallen in love with other books.
Lovely answer. Lesley, have you got a favourite book you've written?
Well, it always was Never Look Back, which was my big sort of epic history of America type book, 900 pages of stuff. And that was the book I always wanted to write. And actually, they've done a survey, and I think something like 95% of my fans love that book the most. But when I started Belle, she became my favourite because there was something about her, and I'd grown up a lot in those years in between. Yes, like Katie, I've liked most of my books. I do remember, amazingly, that it's like families, because people say, how do you remember who was in this book and who was in that one, you know? But you do, it's like a family, like you don't forget one of your children, do you? You know, you actually always remember you've got three, and which ones have got which children, etc. It's the same with books. But yeah, so Belle was one that I loved, and you know, and that's why it became a trilogy.
Listen, guys, we're now, it's flashed by this hour. Honestly, it's been such a joy to speak to you both. Now, those of you who can see your chat box there, I put a link there that can take you to Katie's latest book, Wedding in the Country. So if you want to grab that, I noted today's event's been predominantly about Lesley's new book, but do buy Katie's book as well, and particularly buy it from us, dare I say it. That seems like the right thing to say. So there's a link there. You can either click it or copy it and put it into a browser. Now, what I'm just going to post now a link to our YouTube channel. This event will be on our YouTube channel. I've put it on there now, as are 130 or more other events that we've done in lockdown. So it's our lockdown diary, basically. So it's been a busy old year, dare I say it. So. And then
busy doing nothing is what I would say.
Busy sitting here chatting to people. I'm so grateful that I've got a great team in the shop, because it's allowed me to basically sit here and chat to lots of lovely authors, which is a glorious.
Ben, can I just say, if anyone does buy a book from you, by me, I will send you signed and dedicated book plates, if you would like me to do that, so they can get signed copies.
I'll drop you my address. So
right.
So yeah, no, let's do that. So I've put two links on the chat function. The first one is Katie's book. The second one is our YouTube channel. Do subscribe, and you'll see this event. Lesley, thank you and congratulations.
Well, it was a joy being on here. It was a joy seeing Katie again.
Oh, it was
Let's get together again soon, Katie.
Oh yes, let's get together in real life.
Yes, it would be lovely. Yeah.
How far apart do you live? I mean, Katie, where do you live?
Well, I live in Stroud, and Lesley lives in Torquay.
No,
so
yeah.
We're not that near, but we're at the same side of the country.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I've got to the stage where I don't go very far these days, but I'm going to get out of that, because I'm slipping into old age without even knowing, and I don't want to. So I'm going to really make the effort, especially when the lockdown, all this stuff ends, to get out and about.
Yeah. I think Torquay is a nice place to have been locked down, though. I suspect you've had some nice walks and nice places.
Oh yes, and the sea is always a joy. You know, walking the dogs in the morning, looking at the sea is lovely. Yeah.
No, I get that. Patrice Collins, thanks for such a lovely evening and allowing us to share your wonderful works. Keep them coming, as she said. That's a message to both of you. Right, I'm going to say goodbye to you both. Thank you once more. Thank you to the audience. And we've obviously got plenty more to come, including, dare I say it, the Christie Left-Airy event in a couple of weeks. So do look at tringbookfestival.co.uk for more events. We've got a couple of crackers next week as well. Ronan Hessian is one of them, and Ian Moore is the other, he's a comedian who's written a wonderful kind of Richard Osman style kind of Thursday Murder Club style book, so which I'm looking forward to. I'm reading that right now as we speak. So thank you all, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you. Bye bye then.
Bye bye.